Hello again, Struckweb. In about 2 weeks, roughly, we will be able to play Diablo 4 with the early access. And I'm still here evolving my old builds and making some others so that they're ready for launch so that I have you covered in as many fronts as possible. Iceplosion 2.0. The evolution of this sorcerer build is amazing. I already liked that build in paper, but I tried certain things during the server slam and I really loved using Blizzard as a spender. So this build is all about all those explosions and about surviving close and personal and having Blizzard where you are. So you could benefit from various bonuses and so you could use Frozen Nova, Frost Nova to the best you can to apply vulnerable. We have three defensive skills with this one. We have Blizzard as a spender. In general, it's just so fun. You'll see in the enchantment section some more about why I took certain things. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this setup as much as I did enjoy its very early inception levels at level 20 during the server slam. The footage you will see throughout this video would be the beginnings of that build, what it would look like around level 20 from what I recorded during the server slam. So buckle up, strap up, and let's go. About the skill tree, this is what it looks like. I will talk in detail about them in a moment. Just gonna mention them: Frostbolt, Flame Shield, Teleport, Frost Nova, Blizzard, Deep Freeze, and the Shatter passive. Waltrick has updated his calculator so we can now equip best in SWAT in all SWATs. For us, I'll go through those later, but here are the skill icons if you really need them. This is on my website. And again, we're not taking a conjuration skill, which means the enchantment for Frost Nova is not a part of the build. It is a good one, but it doesn't proc as much as one would think. So I decided, okay, let's just go more survivability so we can deal more damage rather than getting those enchantments to deal more damage. So you could use Frozen Orb until you get Blizzard. Use Frozen Orb until you get Blizzard, it's fine. Um, but once you get Blizzard, you need to remove some points. You see, I have 4 points in Frostbolt. Those 4 points in Frostbolt come from the necessity of having 6 points to unlock defensive skills. So you can have one, two, three. By the way, I prefer this that generates mana because I can apply vulnerable with Frost Nova, and Frost Nova has 2 charges. So I have plenty of other ways to apply vulnerable. Before you get Frost Nova, I would use Flickering Frostbolt and then switch to the one that generates mana. For Frozen Orb, the same. You could maybe use a Frozen Orb that applies vulnerable, but if you're struggling with the mana and spamminess, maybe get Destructive one. But again, this one is removed once you get Blizzard, so it won't be long before you get rid of it. And since it's cheap to respec early in the game, you won't have any problem messing around with this or that. Then we have Frost Nova 111, Teleport 111, and Flame Shoot 111. I prefer Mystical Frost Nova. It's amazing. Um, Actually, no. Yeah, yes, that's it. That's it. Mystical Frost Nova is amazing. That's the must pick for me for this build. And especially considering the 8 seconds against bosses, that means you shouldn't put yourself too much in danger during boss fights unless you really want to. Um, Shimmering might be good, but we won't need it. I mean, it's an overkill, and the Frost Nova by itself applying vulnerable is already too good to miss out on. Shimmering Teleport, needless to say, it's perfect. We don't need that one, and the same way that we don't need this one as much rather than the healing. The healing is great here. So with this movement speed, with that healing, I think this is a great additional skill to the build. Then Elemental Attunement, 3 points. Then we have here align the elements, 2 points in protection. Always use protection and always max it out. 3 points into protection. The best skill, the best passive of the sorcerer. It makes what a sorcerer is for me. Precision Magic, 3 points, definitely there. Maxing out Blizzard, then taking Mage's Blizzard, because again, Wizard's Blizzard is pointless if you don't use a if you don't use a core skill, and we don't. And yeah, this one is lovely as well. Next up, maxing out Ice Veil, Snap Freeze, and Cold Front. And then moving on to Deep Freeze. Again, all 3 points there. This would go very nicely with our defensive skills and keeping us alive right after ulting, right after healing up with that. And Permafrost, Icy Touch, Hoarfrost, and Frigid Breeze. All of those are maxed out as well. And then we have Shatter. See, there is something you need to keep in mind. Shatter, wow, it might be great for mobbing and in general when there's multiple enemies that you could actually use that exploding element of Shatter for. During boss fights like world bosses or big massive bosses that don't have ads or minions that you can freeze easily, I would recommend swapping out to Avalanche. Even on the higher levels, even when you're max level, every now and then spending 50, 60,000 to respec a single point won't be that expensive to do for the occasion during boss fights. Sure, Shatter is great for mobbing and everything. It's perfect for that build. But for boss fights, I wouldn't recommend it because, again, you need to freeze them and that only happens, wait, few times during a fight. Okay, maybe at higher levels when everyone has shit tons of CC in their builds, maybe it would be a little easier, but still you won't see as much use as if you change to Avalanche. Quickly about the enchantments. Top pick enchantment Blizzard. Double Blizzard is the name of the game. And you standing in the middle of the mobs with 3 defensive skills, using Blizzard on top of yourself to get certain things like one of the, I think it was Snow Guard that was called the aspect that gives you danger reduction while you stand in your own Blizzard. You're using Frost Nova, freezing them. You're using Blizzard, extra damage to frozen enemies and stuff like that. And then there's that other Blizzard every 15 seconds happening around you. And if you take Fireball, keep in mind for Fireball enchantment, you would need at least 1 point into Fireball from items, ideally, so you don't have to mess around with your passives. If in the worst case, you can remove points from certain passives, um, um, or remove a point from Frostbolt, 1 point from Frostbolt, just so you can get that extra Fireball there. In the worst case, you can even remove 2 points from Frostbolt and put Fireball and Enhanced Fireball, those 2 points. Or you can try and get item that gives you X to Fireball ranks or X to Core skill ranks, something like that. But Fireball's Explosion, one of the best enchantments ever. Even if you're not doing a fire build for mobbing, this would be amazing, just amazing. And there's good alternative options. My alternative pick, if you don't want to go the fireball way, you can just do that frozen orb. Worth mentioning, ice shards is not bad. Ice blades could be nice, but again, I'm not a fan of ice blades AI. Frostbolt's also not a bad thing to use, but I would use blizzard and fireball regardless of that. For the unique items in this build, I've picked a few good items. It has been confirmed by multiple sources, including one developer apparently said it. We can have more than a single unique item. Sure, that breaks the balancing a lot, and it makes legendaries not as appealing anymore. But I've picked 4 unique items. One major, massive top pick is Ice Hard Bryce, the pants. While injured, your potion also restores resource. Enemies that die while frozen have chance to unleash a Frost Nova, perfect with the theme of the Iceplosion setup. Gives you massive amount of intelligence, damage to frozen enemies, damage to injured enemies, and freeze duration. Now, for the other items, you might want to check my spreadsheet, or on this one, you could read here in the legendary aspects segment, which we will cover in a moment, those in detail. I have ways to rearrange them, but I'm just going to mention them and talk about them in detail in a moment. Frostburn Argwoffs. very good ones: freeze synergies, code synergies, resource regeneration synergies. Harlequin Crest, the Shaco. The main reason I love this is because of the rank 12 skills and damage reduction, together with some cooldown reduction, maximum life, all stats, and everything on it is good. Crafting material drop rate must have for doing Hell Tides, because Hell Tides have resources that only drop there, and this is the only unique item that could give you this. It's very difficult to get this stats in, in in general. And then Ring of Starless Skies will fit nicely as well for core skill stuff, but we don't take this for the core skill stuff. We take it for some of the other things. So this one not as great on that build, but it's good temporarily if you want to switch to using a core skill instead of Blizzard, which changes the build, but still not that much. But again, you might consider this for some of the rest of the stuff, for those things here. All stats, Wiki hit chance, if you get it. But whether it's worth it to use the Ring of Starless cards instead of Ring Prodigy, I think no. So here I have the best in SWAT stuff, but on my website I've already written the legendary next to the unique item. So in the helmet you would want encased aspect, but if you do get Harlequin's crest, I'm willing to sacrifice encased aspect for Harlequin's crest. Amulet exploiters aspect, chest frost blitz aspect. This one is must stay there. Pants, again, maybe I encased, but instead of encased, you might have in the pants snow guard aspect. This is just a typo. So snow guard aspect is in the pants until the ice hard bryce drop. So when the ice hard bryce drops, then you take that one. So keep that in mind. Then you have for the gloves, you have stuff like aspect of biting coat, and you have stuff like the frostburn. The frostburn, when it drops, I'm willing to sacrifice biting coat. It's worth it. Boots, fortune, ring control, and then the second ring is prodigy aspect, and this is the one I would sacrifice if I have to sacrifice one of the two rings for Ring of Starless Skies. But again, Ring of Starless Skies is a very alternative pick if you decide not to use Blizzard and use a core skill. If you do use Blizzard, you're not gonna get that much from that ring. There is another ring you can use, and that other ring is called where was it? Um, this one, Ring of Misfortune, might be interesting to see. I'm not sure why it has this 100% chance to lose all your resource, but only gives you this much stat. There is something to consider about this ring. Maybe there will be something amazing that we don't know in the background that is not written about it. But overall, the other two rings are all core skill related, so they're not that great synergies. Now, if we go for the weapon glacial aspect and for the offhand aspect of the frozen tundra, I would not suggest going two-handed, but if you do go two-handed, you'd have to sacrifice frozen tundra, and that's not as great. You might actually um, remove something like biting coat and put frozen tundra there. But if you have the frostburn already, that's not going to be an option. But frozen tundra, better priority than biting coat. We have plenty of ways to do vulnerable. Biting coat is not as necessary. And again, I think Wooded notes how to rework if you get any of the stuff. Pretty much for those two uniques, no need to rearrange many things. I arranged the build in such a way that it's easy and painless. And for the for this one, for the Bryce, you do this. You pretty much replace no guard aspect. I made it easy. I made it easy this time around that you don't have to rearrange much. Just remove whatever was in that slot and you're ready. Quickly showing you what each of those aspects does, so you know what they are and not just the names. So glacial aspect, when you cast Blizzard, it will periodically spawn exploding ice spikes that deal X damage. Your ice spikes deal multiplicative increased damage to frozen enemies. You already see why I don't want to get rid of the glacial and would rather get rid of that one if I had to. ideally don't get rid of either. Biting Cold, when you freeze an enemy, chance to make them vulnerable for 3 seconds. Again, we have Frost Nova doing vulnerable for us, and that's fine. We can get rid of it. Frozen Tundra, while Deep Freeze is active, exploding ice spikes form in the area dealing cold damage. Your ice spikes have increased explosion radius. This one gives us some parts of the ice explosion name. So it's like a defining thing for the build. That's why I don't want to get rid of it. Control, I definitely don't want to get rid of it. It's good. Extra damage to immobilize, stunned, or frozen enemies. But in the worst case, you could get rid of it if you really, really feel okay. But this keep in mind, this will be not as great on boss fights. So on boss fights, you might want to prepare something else in the ring one, an alternative ring that you might want to place there temporarily. But you don't have to keep moving, removing aspects. It's better to just have an alternative item there, like maybe a unique ring or something. Although again, that misfortune one, we don't know much about it. Exploiter must pick and in the amulet makes it 50% more effective, meaning 40% to 75% increased damage to unstoppable, which would be big bosses in the majority of the fight would be unstoppable. Okay, hit chance increased while we have a barrier, lovely for us. Using a cooldown, which again means skill with a cooldown restores mana, perfect to keep spamming Blizzard. Encased aspect, and keep in mind we have 3 skills with cooldown and an ultimate with a cooldown, so we have 4 of those we can use. Deep Freeze, while it's active, we heal up. Then Frost Nova, this I definitely wouldn't remove this one ever. Additional charge for Frost Nova, but increased cooldown per charge. And while within your own Blizzard, take less damage. Sockets and gems. If some of you are not clear what is good, I'm here for you. Normally that shouldn't be the case, but just in case, I would be recommending certain things. For the weapons, I would say top pick would be Emerald for me. Top pick Emerald because of the damage to vulnerable being much easier to hold on a boss than damage to crowd controlled or damage with anything else. So top pick is Emerald for bosses. If you're not doing bosses, Sapphire is your top pick. Whether you would choose to just keep removing them or whether you choose to have an alternative weapon and offhand combo, it's up to you. This one won't be as good on bosses as the Emerald would be. Basic skill damage is very emergency if you really don't have any of the other gems in good quality. But ultimate skill damage should be better. Overpower damage should be better than basic skill damage. So keep that in mind. Even life on kill should be maybe better than it. Um, Now for the armor, Ruby is my top pick for life. Diamond is my second top pick for barrier generation. Skull is kind of like okay, but not that great, especially if you're doing boss fights. Um, Although it will still help because you have healing from flame shield, so keep that in mind. It synergizes nicely in that way. And for the resistances, diamond unless you need a specific resistance. For the gear rows, I normally separate them into two categories: higher priority and lower priority. But the higher priority is pretty vast, and that doesn't mean that something at the top here is necessarily better than something at the bottom. I don't have the time right now to arrange them by priority and to arrange them by SWOT. In the future, that's my plan to have for each SWOT the top picks I would put and in what priority they would be, including fewer alternatives if you can get the top picks. Considering how bad the rerolling system is designed in Diablo 4, of course you would need some alternatives. Now, again, keywords here to look for would be critical strike chance, critical strike damage, lucky hit chance, damage reduction, ranks, elites, and for the categories, you would be prioritizing mastery. Second pick would be ultimate. Third pick would be basic, and then the last pick in terms of priority would be defensive. In terms of what types of skills, I'm not sure if there is something that gives you frost skills. or whether there is one called code skills. But if there is something that is frost or cold, obviously good priority. Frost cold damage. I think cold is the damage, frost is the category. Um, there might be cases where you see frost, there might be cases where you see cold. So prioritize those as keywords as well. And so you're looking to mix and match those keywords. And also, you're looking for things like resistance to all elements, queue application. You're looking for things that have to do with elites, as I mentioned, killing elites, or after killing an elite or to an elite with certain element. You're looking for things to crowd control and to vulnerable. For bosses, vulnerable is much more useful than crowd control. Again, I'll repeat that much easier to keep a boss vulnerable than to crowd control it. Then things like damage while healthy, barrier generation, chance when struck to gain X life as barrier, wiki hit chance while you have a barrier, denaturation while you have a barrier, life as barrier on kill, crit strike chance against shield frozen enemies, also not bad. Damage to shield frozen enemies, again, not bad. Not as good on bosses again, though. Hopefully it's clear in those ones. And then those alternative 7 things in the lower priority, they are all good, but not amazing. Considering what else you could do. Attack speed, pretty nice. Casting speed, but with more attack speed comes the need for more mana generation, and that means you would have to keep further sacrificing damages and crits and stuff like that, or survivability. But hopefully it's clear, and on my spreadsheet here, it's the same stuff except the orange ones are the white ones here, and the golden ones there are blue here. But I've got those listed here regardless of from where you're reading that build. I've decided to focus again on getting the sockets, getting the glyphs, rather than getting those legendary notes that are just not worth the points that you need to invest to reach them. So I made two stages of this. Stage number one you would have at level 84 if you have 0 renown, but by the time you're level 84 you should have 20 points from renown, which means around level 79, as early as level 79, you could get the first shape, the first stage of the Paragons. The other version is at level 27 with almost all points, almost all 220 points except 3. I left the last 3 points up to you to decide where you want to put them. Because some things might require dex or willpower or int to get them. You might need to feel there. And there's other various things that could offer you some feeling with those last 3 points. I'll show you in a moment later where those are. First, let's go in order, um, in the right order of doing things. You start with obviously the starting board, and I normally take these 3 main resources, and then I take the damage and life, skipping this life, and then since here we would be putting something that uses our main stat, the intelligence, we want to take a route that's as close to the main nodes as possible. There is intelligence here, and there's 2 times it here in terms of 10. You're not taking those yet. You could return later to take those, and I did return later and took them. So you're taking this route, you're prioritizing getting this as fast as possible. Once you get this, you start putting points such as here, 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 here. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. Before you take this 5 non-physical damage, I personally would take this 5 intelligence, 5 intelligence, 5 intelligence. This gives us up to 55 intelligence, which means 11 times the bonus of 14.4% increased damage to mastery skills. This is why I decided this time to put as many as I can that's worth it. And now you can do 1, 2, 3 to get 2 times this bonus again, and then another times 4, and then 5. And that means for 5 points you're getting 3 times 14.4, so almost 45 more percent mastery skill damage. But I decided, okay, let's leave those for later. Let's move on to the next board, which is Frigid Fate, but we are not actually getting Frigid Fate. 15% wiki hit, up to 15% wiki hit chance. Not as nice considering you have to waste 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 points for it, regardless of which way you decide to go. Here we are prioritizing reaching Enchanter as fast as possible to get this plus 9.6% increased non-physical damage. It also gives us for each skill equipped in enchantment slots gain the resistance of that skill's element, which is pretty solid to be honest. This one here also gives us, by the way, I forgot to say it. It gives us mastery skills have 20% increased area, which for Blizzard is perfect in our case. So int, willpower, dex, and then int, strength socket. Once you get that socket, I would do 1 point, 1 point, 1 point. Then I would do 1, 1. And after that, I will do 1, 1, damage to vulnerable, then int damage to vulnerable, move here intelligence, and then you're going this way and connecting it with an ice fall rotated in that direction. Ice fall is the only one that we are taking later. We are not taking it right away. We will be taking it in the second stage. Um, so priority again, taking as much int as possible on the way, as least strength as possible as well, and then getting this glyph socket. This is a dex board. Well, it's for us it will be a dex board because we are putting territorial. For each dex, 5 dex, 9.6 increase damage to close targets, and you get, if you meet the 25 requirement, 10 damage reduction against close enemies. And with the way we play it, we will be standing close to our enemies. This is the whole play style of it. That's why 3 defensive skills to trigger protection and stuff. So you're prioritizing getting this early, then on the way you have already taken this dex, and then now it's taking this dex. Damage reduction from shield enemies, this dex. Then you're taking this damage reduction from shield enemies, and then going for this one here. Then dex here, dex here, dex here. And that gives you 34 dex. This is all the dex this board can offer. Unfortunately, but that's how it is. And now you're moving, taking this one, this, leaving the board, connecting it with an enchantment master. Enchantment master 20%. We'll be fine even without those 20%. Considering we have to spend over 20 points to reach it, it's just not viable. It's not worth it. Prioritizing getting here as fast as possible. So we are taking this route, but before taking this dex, you're going up first. Non-physical damage dex, non-physical damage int, socket. Now, for each 5 decks within range, you get 7.2 increased damage to vulnerable. Again, vulnerable, much easier to keep than crowd controlled. We could have taken something that gives us 14.4 damage to crowd controlled or to shield, but it's not that great for bosses. And remember, with bosses is where the DPS is most needed. And then dealing damage to vulnerable enemy increases your damage by 1% up to 6 multiplicative. Um, if you meet 25 decks, and we will get all the decks we can before we leave this board. So now that we've taken this, we do that. Take these decks, then take this non-physical damage in these decks, and then this non-physical damage in intelligence. Next up, you're moving up. Resistance, intelligence, willpower, intelligence, those 2 decks. And eventually this intelligence, this willpower, and this dex. And we're not taking this unless you really need those 10 resistances. Again, for now we're prioritizing getting as many boards and as many sockets as early as possible to maximize our DPS potential and survivability. Moving on here, int with some willpower. And this would be where we put a willpower gem called Imbiber, which increases your potion healing, but that's not the reason we take it. We take it for the every 5 willpower within range, 8.822 increased damage while healthy. With this build, with 3 defensive skills, with protection, we should have no problem staying healthy a lot of the time. Now, especially with Imbiber on boss fights, you would actually waste less potions in between potion drops, so there's that too. So from here, you're entering, taking willpower, int, socket. Next step is willpower, resistance, intelligence, the 2 willpower there. Then the next step would be to go willpower, int, willpower, strength, willpower. And at this point, you're done with the first stage. Now, the next stage, as you can see, is we are starting to feel stuff. Feeling 101. There's various things you could start with, but I would start with this board for 5 points, which is this dex, this int, this resistance, and this 2 times 10 int, I mean 2 times 5 resistance, and then another extra resistance. You're taking 5 points here. You're putting them for 3 times this bonus, the 14.4. You get almost 45 extra mastery skill damage. Next is this board. In this one, we have 70 out of 40 intelligence. And before, if you notice, we also had 65. So there are some minor changes, but we did take this one here, if you've noticed. I took it by putting this point and that point. So 2 points to get this one. And I think it's better than spending 3 points, obviously. So saving you 1 point there. Then the smart move would be to go here, dex, int, damage to vulnerable, vulnerable damage reduction from vulnerable. So this is damage reduction as well. This is damage reduction. So there's 3 times damage, 2 times reduction, and this one is damage and damage with some damage reduction. And then it's this board here. Where I said Icefall is the one we will actually take from the legendary ones because there is good stuff around it. So dex int, damage to shield this cluster with physical damage and damage to shield and non-physical damage. So yeah, elemental damage and damage to shield, it's good. Then we're going here and we're taking these 3 damage reductions. But before we take these 3 damage reductions, we're just going for Icefall first. Taking Icefall first, then after that we are going over here, taking cold damage, chill application, and then cold damage and chill application as a cluster. We're not taking those 3 yet. Before we take those 3, we have other stuff to take. And we are branching out from here, taking this non-physical damage and non-physical damage and damage to elites. Then we're branching out here, non-physical damage, non-physical damage, and life. We're not taking this life though, but you can take it later if you want. And with that, we pretty much have some spare points again to put into various places that we might not have taken before. So as you can see, those 4 points here are something you could take. There's some other blue notes here and there that I didn't pick originally that you might want to take. Again, those notes here, as you saw, I have taken them on my way to reach this place. And again, that's damage to shield and intelligence with some willpower on the way. We're not taking this point, we're just doing that way. To get notified when I upload more content like this one or other builds and guides for Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on notifications. As well as keep in mind there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets you be a paying member for my channel to get access to perks such as emotes and badges made by me, as well as the option to get one-on-one tutoring for the very basics of Adobe Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects. And memberships can be cancelled at any time if you no longer wanna be a member. Thanks for watching all the way until the end. Struck up, keep it cool until next time, and goodbye.